How's it going, everybody? So today I want to talk about a theory that I had when I was walking out of the theater after watching the Odyssey. This isn't just about Hollywood or filmmaking. It's about Christopher Nolan being even more of a genius than we ever realized. What if Christopher Nolan's entire filmography isn't just complex storytelling? What if each movie is actually a coded message, a piece of a puzzle concealing that his brother is a hitman? And the themes of each film are representative of his relationship with his brother, or his brother's lethal occupation. Sounds crazy, right? Well, let's get into it. Before going into specifics, let's understand the premise. Nolan is known for his layered stories, his hidden symbols, and grand spectacle, which seems to be a family affair. Both Christopher and his brother Jonathan are in the motion picture business. But there are 3 siblings in the Nolan family, and not much is known about his older brother Matthew. Except, in March 2005, 63-year-old American financier Robert Cohen was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered in San Jose, Costa Rica. Prosecutors alleged that Matthew Nolan was hired to extort and kill Cohen over a multi-million-dollar debt. According to Police Sergeant John Lucky, he first encountered the oldest Nolan brother in 2008. He was claiming that he'd name-dropped The Dark Knight and his fictitious involvement in its financing to facilitate a scheme where he'd write checks for Costa Rican bank accounts, deposit them in Chicago, and withdraw as much of the funds as he could before the checks would clear. And he had made out with over $600,000. Side note, I actually visited the buildings where they filmed the opening heist scene of The Dark Knight when I was in Chicago recently. It was pretty cool. Sorry, just had to nerd out for a second. The FBI finally arrested Matthew Nolan in Chicago in 2009 after Costa Rica had already requested his extradition. However, a U.S. judge ultimately blocked the extradition due to insufficient evidence, and he was never convicted of the murder. While being held in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago during the 2009 extradition fight, Nolan did try to escape using a makeshift rope woven from bedsheets, though. It was this failed breakout that led to a separate conviction and a 14-month prison sentence, after which he was released, and not much is known about him after that. Now, if his brother Matthew is a hitman, maybe Nolan's movies are a kind of confessional, disguised as entertainment. I believe that these motifs could be clues, or rather admissions, from Nolan himself. Each film might hyperbolize a different aspect of Matthew's work, or rather Christopher's perspective on his brother's life choices. So, what about the films? Let's examine them, from his debut to his latest work, and see what each of them could secretly be telling us. Nolan's first feature film, Following, is about a young man who becomes obsessed with following strangers, leading him into a world of deception and crime. The film's theme of obsession and infiltration could have mirrored Matthew's initiation into this life. The protagonist's obsession with following could symbolize Matthew's early days in the industry, learning to track, spy, and blend in. It could also represent the beginning of Matthew's secrecy, growing further from his brothers, a quiet start, observing targets from the shadows, and building his skills before going fully covert. Next we have Memento, which is about a man with short-term memory loss trying to uncover his wife's killer. Nolan's narrative is told non-linearly, emphasizing disorientation and manipulation. The idea that Matthew's true identity and past are deliberately erased or hidden could be representative of an operative using a cover in order to complete their mission. The protagonist's fragmented memory could parallel how Matthew's true role is hidden, with only partial glimpses being available to the public. Also, Christopher Nolan wrote Leonard Shelby as a tragic figure, despite being a serial killer who will alter his reality to suit his delusions. Interesting. Insomnia revolves around a detective investigating a murder in Alaska, plagued by guilt and sleep deprivation. The theme of sleeplessness and guilt could symbolize Matthew's clandestine work, constantly active and never truly able to rest because of the dangerous life that he leads. The cover-up could involve false identities or staged deaths in order to hide true whereabouts. It could also act as a warning from Chris to his brother, showing the inevitable outcome of the path that he's chosen to walk. There will be lies, there will be blackmail, and there will be death, and you will never know who to trust. Nolan's Batman Begins introduces Bruce Wayne's transformation into Batman, using disguises, advanced skills and wealth, and secret identities. What I'm wondering is, could this be a metaphor for Matthew's life or Christopher's? Batman's secret war against crime could mirror Matthew's, hidden from public view but operating in the shadows. Or it could be about Chris, the Bruce Wayne to Matthew's Batman. the publicly normal one, but he's secretly active in dangerous operations. Because Nolan has talked in interviews before about how he was fascinated by the duality of Bruce Wayne and Batman. Maybe it fascinated him so much because it reminded him of his enigmatic older brother. Also, the main antagonists of the film being a fear-causing psychologist and secret societies? Interesting. I think The Prestige has some of the most damning evidence, because it centers on rival magicians obsessed with showmanship, illusions, and secrets. This mirrors the secret life of Matthew and Chris, using misdirection like magicians in order to guide the audience's eyes away from any criminal activity. The film's themes of duality and illusion could be a nod to the double life that Matthew leads. What's real and what's a cover? Hugh Jackman's character spends the whole film attempting to copy Christian Bale's trick, much like how other filmmakers will always try to emulate Christopher Nolan. But the reality of the trick is it's destroying his life. The same way that Nolan only makes these movies in order to keep suspicion away from his brother. Also, two brothers who need each other in order for the trick to work, and if one of them ever gets locked up, it's game over? Interesting. The Dark Knight's main focus is chaos that's unleashed by the Joker, representing an agent of disorder. The Joker and Batman's relationship could be a parallel of Christopher and Matthew's. One is the wealthy public face with plenty of resources who's hiding a dark secret, and the other one operates in the underworld and could make the former's life come crashing down if the truth were ever to come out. I think that's why the Joker is so well written, because it was Christopher and Jonathan Nolan trying to understand their brother. And then we have Inception, implanting ideas into someone's subconscious through layered dreams. That's a little much for hitmen. But it could symbolize how Christopher Nolan is using Hollywood in order to manipulate people's perceptions. I mean, the movie is about secret agents who are plagued by the guilt of their past, losing touch with what's real, and reshaping the world around them in order to fit their narrative and complete their mission. To me, that sounds like the life of someone who wants out. But it could also make a great summer blockbuster. And then we get to the conclusion of the Dark Knight trilogy, which involves a plan to destroy Gotham, but it also has themes of rebirth and hidden resilience. I think The Dark Knight Rises is actually about Matthew's redemption to Chris, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Gotham's destruction could symbolize the erasure of evidence, with new identities taking their place. At the end of the film, Bruce sacrifices himself, leaving behind his troubled past and his double life in an attempt to disappear. Batman realized that the Joker was right, and in the real world, Chris realized he didn't have to protect his brother anymore, if nobody ever asked about him again. And then Interstellar. This is my biggest stretch, because it explores space travel, wormholes, and humanity's survival. How could that relate to two brothers covering for one another? Well, at its core, the movie's about family going to extreme lengths in order to protect each other, changing how the past is viewed in order to ensure the future. And Murph calling the most important character to the plot the Ghost can't be a coincidence, because a ghost is what hitmen and secret agents are often referred to as. So, a ghost influencing someone's life in order to help advance humanity's story sounds a lot like a hyper-exaggeration of an assassin inspiring a movie plot. We're going to skip over Dunkirk, because that was just like a historical drama. I didn't even like the movie, so we're skipping over that because I want to. But Tenet, it involves inverted time where events are manipulated to prevent disasters. This could represent the manipulation of information, altering perceptions of reality. The whole time inversion plot is a metaphor for rewriting history or erasing traces of your secret work. I see this movie as a continuation of Nolan's themes of Interstellar, but now he's telling us directly that it is about covert operations. And then Oppenheimer. This one's easy. I think it's the beginning of Christopher Nolan's guilt. Knowing what he's been a part of, developing technologies and telling stories despite the detrimental effects that it has on himself and those around him. Christopher Nolan is comparing himself to Oppenheimer. And oh yeah, I also forgot to mention this earlier. While he was being investigated by the FBI, court documents indicated that Matthew Nolan used the name Matthew McCall Oppenheimer during the time of the murder plot. Interesting. That sounds like search engine manipulation to me. The same way that when The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen was adapted by Disney, it was titled Frozen. So that when you looked up Disney Frozen, the first results were no longer about Walt Disney's cryogenically frozen head anymore. Or Trump steaks, so that when you looked up Donald Trump steak, Sasha Riley's testimony wouldn't be the first thing to pop up. Because if you were to Google Nolan Hitman, or Nolan Chicago, or Nolan Oppenheimer, the first things that would pop up wouldn't be the illegal escapades of his eldest brother. Instead, it would be Tenet, The Dark Knight, and Oppenheimer. And lastly, the Odyssey, Nolan's interpretation of Homer's timeless epic. It's a story about a man who spent decades trying to accomplish the impossible, only to realize he never did it for himself. And his journey of self-acceptance and forgiveness happens after his supposed success. It's a tragedy, plain and simple, and the way in which Nolan presented the hero's journey is equally as tragic. Because here's what the siren said to Odysseus in Book 12 of the Odyssey. Famous Odysseus, great glory of Achaia, draw near, and bring your ship to rest, and listen to our voices. No man rows past this isle in his dark ship without hearing the honey-sweet sound from our lips. He delights in it, and goes on his way as a wiser man. We know all of the suffering the Argives and the Trojans endured, by the gods' will on the wide plains of Troy. We know everything that comes to pass on the fertile earth. Now, just listen to what Christopher Nolan believes the siren song is. All the things you wanted to be, and then all the things you wished you had never wished for. It was a delicious itch that you want to scratch, but you find it's under the skin, and you can't reach it. So the delicious itch becomes unbearable. It told you what you most want is what you most can't have, and that the most you can't have is what you already had and lost. It was a song of all the promises that I failed to keep, and it told me I don't really want to go home. To me, the first one sounds like temptation, and the second one, it sounds like the confessions of a man who's riddled with guilt. I think that's really interesting. Since every accusation is a confession, what could he be telling us? Could Christopher Nolan's entire filmography be a cover-up for his brother Matthew's life as a hitman? Or is this film him trying to find solace by putting his secrets on the silver screen? Each film like a weight being lifted off of his conscience, but it's disguised as entertainment? And of course, this is all speculation. It's fun and fictional, and it's just designed to make us see patterns where there might be none. Or maybe I hit the nail on the head. You never know. This theory would also explain why Christopher Nolan is so off the grid. No email, no social media, barely even a flip phone. That sounds like a character from a spy thriller, much more than an A-list movie director, don't you think? Regardless of the validity of my theory, I do think it is fascinating how themes of deception, chaos, redemption, and hidden truths run through all of Nolan's works. And no matter what the intentions are behind it, that man does know how to make a good movie. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. So what do you think? Did I uncover one of Hollywood's biggest cover-ups? Or did my mind just start wandering during a 3-hour-long movie because I didn't have any popcorn? Or, if you have any ideas for videos that you want to see in the future, drop them down below. We may just talk about it. Peace. Get these bangers out of here.